minutes to go until Life Today Live. It's going to be a good one. Looking forward to this one. You're online. Periscope and YouTube. Welcome to Life Today Live. I'm Randy Robison, here in the noon hour every day, hopefully, if I can maintain a proper schedule. And we are on Twitch, we are on Periscope, we are on YouTube, and here are all the places. The Life Today page, Facebook, and Twitter account. Those are my personal Twitch and Periscope accounts. Working on the Life Today side of things. So, today we're going to talk about a topic that I hadn't thought about much until recently when I sat down with Rich Wilkerson from Trinity Church in Miami, Florida. Rich Wilkerson Sr., some of you may know Rich Jr., who's been on Life Today several times. We're going to talk about honor. Honor. And I think a lot of us don't get this, or we maybe think of it wrongly. I know I didn't think of it in the proper way. And so I'm saying that as someone who hadn't put a lot of thought into it and hadn't really thought about how it applies to my life. When you say the word honor, you think of, as a Christian, you think of the Ten Commandments, honor your father and mother. And yes, that is applicable. But what if you're an adult now, right? One, you can still honor your parents, but what does that look like? Because it's a different dynamic than obeying your parents when you're a child. And then, sometimes, well, everyone's fallible. Every human is fallible. And so people do things that aren't honorable. We do things that aren't honorable. So how does honor actually play into our lives? What does it look like practically? And should it be something that we strive for? Well, I sat down, like I said, with Rich Wilkerson Sr. recently. He wrote a book on honor. And I think we should just start with kind of a basic definition. And so we will go to Mr. Rich for that, Pastor Rich.
People get the words mixed up, respect, honor, respect. In fact, usually you look in the dictionary, under respect it has honor, under honor it has respect. The way I interpret it is that I can respect you from a distance, but it's hard to honor you from a distance. That's something I do up close. And honor, in my humble estimation, incorporates two Jesus components that Jesus was known for: humbleness of heart or humility, and servant leadership. And when I meet you, I do my best to find something that I can relate to you, to open a door that I can honor you in. That's what I do with my friends, but that's what I want to do with people that I don't even know. That's honor. It's done up close. I can respect you from a distance, never meet you. When I meet you up close, it has to start with honor.
Okay, so honor is not the same thing as respect, although, they are very similarly tied. The literal meaning of the word, as it's used in the Old Testament anyway, is to make heavy or to give weight. Okay? What does that look like? Well, I'm going to go through several practical things as we bounce back and forth between Rich and the live. By the way, the chat is open, so if you guys have any questions or comments, please chime in. I can see you guys out there on Periscope, Twitch, and YouTube, so chime in. Okay, so the idea to honor someone, to give weight, okay, to make heavy. Well, okay, what does that mean? I think one way to do that is to take people's legitimate needs seriously, to give away, to not blow it off. Okay, now I mean legitimate needs. It's not everyone's whim or want or desire, but I'm talking about real needs. When it comes to your parents, especially if you're an adult like I am and you've got aging parents, they're having some real needs. They may need you to do something for them. Now, there is a balancing act between letting someone take advantage of you, but you can maintain a proper distance and a proper discipline with someone while still taking their legitimate needs seriously. So that is the first thing that I would say. And even if you have rotten parents, in fact, I was thinking about this, doing some writing about this recently, and I had imagined the worst case scenario with a parent, okay? Let's just go for the most god-awful thing that a parent can do to a child, just to give an extreme example. I would say the worst thing I can imagine would be for a father to sexually abuse his daughter, okay? So now I'm saying you should give weight to that parent's legitimate needs, all right? How do you do that? Well, I would say, what is the number one need of a parent who is abusive to a child? The number one need for that parent, and the number one need in that case, is to stop. So what should you do if you're aware of that situation or you're caught in that situation? You do whatever it takes to stop it, because that is the biggest need. Obviously in the case of the person that's being abused, but in the case of everyone there, because we've actually had a pedophile, a convicted pedophile on the program who had been in prison, done his time, and was out, and was talking about this really difficult subject. And his number one need while he was committing those heinous acts, his number one need was to stop, was to quit, was to be arrested in the real sense of stop from what he was doing. So if that situation is going on, the best thing you can do is call the authorities, call the police, put a stop to it immediately. That is actually honoring your parent. And a lot of times I think in like that extreme case, we would think, okay, that may not be the case. I'm telling you, it is the case, because you're giving weight to that person's most legitimate need, which is to stop their criminal activity and their abuse. So, and most of us don't, thank God, don't have to deal with that kind of thing. So, giving weight to someone's real needs requires some wisdom, some discernment, and we may not always get it right, but that's okay. I think as long as our positioning is to honor them in the proper way, we're on the right track. Now, Rich has an example, and it's kind of interesting. I think it's just a picture, really, of what honor can look like. So let's go back to Pastor Rich Wilkerson.
Remember the Pope, John Paul II? I love that guy. He was the Pope, if you remember. He would get off his airplane in a foreign, usually a third world country, and he would walk to the bottom of the steps. He would kneel down on the tarmac, and usually the president of the country or the king of the, and he would get down and he would kiss the earth. Mm-hmm. And what he was saying is, I honor you. It's an honor for me to be with you. When they had all come because the Pope is here, right away he would hit the ground. I always thought that was wonderful. Yeah. It just seemed to be so much like a Jesus move.
So, just a good picture of the Pope honoring the people that he is there to see. I kiss the ground when I arrive in a foreign country, not out of honor, but because I'm glad to be off that airplane. But that's just me. Some of you white knuckle flyers know what I'm talking about. Okay, so what's another way we can honor people in our lives? I think we listen to them. Actually try to hear them, not just their words, but their meaning, their needs again. It's easy to dismiss people and nod and say, oh, okay, yeah, how you doing? I'm fine. Yeah, okay, and I get that part of that's normal course of life, but when someone has something going on, they're likely to talk about it. And I think as believers, we should be there to hear them, to listen. So another way to honor someone, I would say, is to just listen to them. In fact, Steve Van Zandt is a local pastor here, and he is the chaplain for where he lives, the city fire and police department. And he gets called into some really, really tough situations. And he talks about the ministry of listening. Because I asked him, I said, man, when you go into that situation where, there's some bad situations, right? People have died. I said, what do you say? I mean, what can you say, right? Especially if he's a pastor, they're not believers. Last thing they want is him spouting off something that they don't even believe, right? So what do you say? And he said, a lot of times I don't say anything. I just listen. I thought, that's interesting. A lot of times people just need someone to hear them, to hear their heart, to pour their heart out to. That is a way that we honor people. Now, let's look to the ultimate example of honor, and that is for Christians. That's in Jesus. So, back to Pastor Rich Wilkerson, and one way that he views honor in the way that Jesus was honored.
Let's look at Jesus. Jesus starts in the Godhead. What an incredible circle of honor that was. Bible says in Genesis 1:26, let us, God's talking, let us. Who? There's no one on the planet. We're not talking about the planet. Let us, Father, Son, Holy, make man in our own image. So he had a tremendous circle of honor. From there was no beginning. Always, that's the way the Godhead lives. Then he comes to earth and he honors his parents. The story in Luke chapter 2 where they go, to Jerusalem for the feast day. Mm-hmm. And mom and everybody's coming back. It's probably about 60 people in the crowd heading back to Nazareth. And she figured, we lost Jesus. Can you imagine losing God? Anyway, so they freak out. They go back to Jerusalem. They look everywhere but the temple. Finally, they end up in the temple. And there he is. And she is kind of freaking out. I don't mean to belittle, but I'm just saying she's, how could you do this?
Right.
I think Jesus was surprised because he was honoring his father. He was there, But the Bible says in Luke chapter 2, verse 51, he went back with them to Nazareth and obeyed his parents. All right, so he backs down and goes back to serve and to honor and to obey. And the next verse says, and he grew in stature and wisdom with God and man. So the way you begin to learn to be the man, the woman that God wants you to be is you honor you find a way to change if you hate your mother or your father, find a way to change the narrative.
So there you can see how Jesus honored others, how he was honored by his father, and he honored his parents. Now, a lot of us don't, I say a lot of us, I have a great relationship with my parents, all four of them, actually. And I don't mean my in-laws. I'm adopted, so I've got, James and Betty Robison, wonderful relationship. I've also got a biological father and a biological mother, and I actually have good relationships with them, and a lot of that has come through time and trying to honor them. But what if you don't have a good relationship with your parents? What can you do that honors them? And frankly, what can you do that honors anybody that you don't have a good relationship? Could be a boss, could be your spouse, could be your child. It could just be those in close proximity, whether it's a neighbor or a coworker or someone at your church, whatever. You know what I'm talking about. Well, and don't underestimate this. I know you get tired of hearing this if you're a Christian, but pray for them. Pray for them. And I'll tell you what prayer does. When you pray for somebody, you get the focus off of yourself, which can be very healthy. And you put them in the right place, which is before God. That's the best place for imperfect people, both us and the ones that we're praying for. And when you lift someone up in prayer before God, you're doing a lot of things. You're saying that you want what's best for them, even if it's repentance, right? Because that would be good for anyone, right? You want them to change their mind about a situation that may be causing difficulty. But you're also saying, God, I trust you with them. You relieve yourself of the burden of difficult people when you pray for them. Now, if you have a great relationship with them, praying for them should be easy. It can also be something we take for granted. So set some time aside, one, just to pray, but to pray for those people close in your life, whatever relationship you have with them. Lift them up in prayer. That is honoring them. All right, I want to go back to Pastor Rich Wilkerson, as he talks about honoring other people.
We go to the disciples. And here he is, taking his clothes off and wrapping them around his waist at the Last Supper. And he washes these dirty, stinking earthlings, fungus-filled, toenailed feet. The lowest part in a Middle Easterner's mind is the feet.
Yeah.
Remember when President Bush had the guy in the Middle Eastern, and the guy
Wear the
threw
shoe.
both shoes. He was dishonoring the president.
Yeah.
Well, the truth is that Jesus washes their feet. One of them was Judas. Honored him. Then he honors the outcast. He's got another circle. People that are unlovely, demon-possessed people. I mean, Mary Magdalene, he cast 7 demons out of her. Then she turned into one of his big funders of his ministry. Someone that people would say there's no hope, he says, oh, there's plenty of hope.
Yeah.
I'm going to need her help financially. Cast it. He never looked over anyone. The demoniac of Gadara. And then finally, the fifth would be the church. The founder of the church is Jesus, and he honors us. When we rebel, when we're lousy, when we're a terrible bride, he reaches down, he loves. And I think in our own lives, we have to look for those people. Make sure we start it in the home. Make sure we have a good relationship with the Lord. Have it in the home. Change the narrative. Have a group of people that you're pouring into. And then reach to those that other people say are unlovely. No, that's my team. And then love his church, you know.
I think it's interesting how he talks about washing the feet, you know. If you've been in the church, you've probably heard about that. You've heard that story. But it was not just the feet, which are, I don't know if you're a foot person, I'm not, right? But it was the symbolism of the dirtiest, the most offensive part I'm going to make clean. And so if we follow the example of Jesus, we say, you know what, even the dirtiest part of someone, I'm going to try to honor them. And love that person even when I recognize the dirt and the grime and the nastiness of their situation. I'm going to choose to love and love them out of it. Instead of condemning someone out of their filth and grime, I'm going to love them out of it, which is hard to do sometimes. I mean, let's be honest. That can be very difficult. People don't deserve honor in the natural sense of things. And that's why it is a supernatural act to honor someone. So there's also one more way, and I want to move back to Pastor Rich one more time because he has the strongest point so far coming. But I want to talk about a legitimate way to honor our parents, especially, but also to honor God, and that is to live a good life, to work hard, to provide, to raise your children right, to fight through every problem and never give up, to be a light in a dark world. Even if people don't recognize it, whether maybe you're divorced, or maybe your children don't talk to you, or if you got a bad relationship with your parents, if you live a good life, you actually honor them as you honor God, and you honor yourself. I think that's a point worth emphasizing, is that we can honor ourselves. Now, this will make more sense in just a minute when Pastor Rich explains something that is really huge. But just to be the best to reach the full potential that we can in our life is an act of honor for everyone, and especially in honoring God. And let's go back to Pastor Rich one last time, because this point, I love this point. I actually, after this interview, I went and did some research and read about this, because I thought, I don't know if I actually consciously thought about it. I've seen this in Scripture, but to really think about it it's life-changing. So listen as Pastor Rich explains. I think the root of all honor, ourselves, our parents, our family, every person out there is a reason to honor everyone, and this is it.
In every class, every theology class, a seminary student studies the Imago Dei, the image of God. Mm-hmm. The fact that all of us have the Imago Dei stamped in us in some capacity.
Right.
And we don't look at someone from the outside in. We always approach looking for the Imago Dei in Randy, in Rich. So if someone is what society would call a bum on the street, I say, I'm going to find the Imago Dei in that person. Mm-hmm. She is made in the image of God. Yeah. We all bear that, whether we're Christian or not. There's still an Imago Dei there. I'm going to love every human. I'm going to reach to them with the love of Jesus until they're healed by the grace of God. Yeah. I'm not even going to jam my faith down. I'm going to love them like Jesus loved with God's help.
That's huge. And let me tell you where that comes from. Genesis 1:26 and 27. So after God makes the world, God said, let us, the Trinity, make man in our image, according to our likeness. And later says, God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female. He created them. Now, he doesn't say that about the animals. He doesn't say that about the earth. I think God reveals himself through his creation, but the only one that has his stamp of his likeness is mankind. That's what separates us from the animals and from the earth. And lately there's a big movement to say that maybe the earth has more value than humans. It's been around since I've been a kid that animals have the same rights as humans. Now, in Texas, we say you can tell the cut of a man by the way he treats his horse. So, the way we treat God's creation, I think, does reflect something. But there's nothing on earth that has the likeness of God stamped into its DNA like mankind. Now, what does this look like when we get out in the world? Take the worst person that you know. They actually have God's stamp in their DNA. They are created in God's image. Now, people are corrupted. People are sinful. But it's still there somewhere. It may be buried deep in a life of sin and worse than sin, if I can say that. Iniquity would be the biblical term. But it's still there. So there is something to honor in everyone. And it doesn't mean you excuse their bad things, excuse their bad life. No, not at all. It means that you look through the dirt, like Jesus did with so many people, and you see that something in there, and you work to pull it out, because you're not honoring just the person. You're honoring God. When you see God's stamp in someone's life, and you say, I recognize that, and I'm going to reach to that. I'm going to speak to that. I'm going to work towards that. I'm going to honor that. You're honoring God. So keep this in mind. This is interesting. It'll change the way you approach people. It'll change the way you approach family, friends, work, coworkers, and complete strangers. The people that you just run into on the street kind of thing. If you recognize God has stamped His likeness in their DNA. It changes the way you look at people, the value that you put on people. And so honor is actually a very big deal. When we learn to honor people because we're honoring God, and even honor ourselves, recognize that the God stamp is in our life as well. It increases the value of people. And it changes, I think, the way that we approach them. So, thanks for joining us today. Noon every day. Here's my little graphic to show you where you can see. Shooting for noon Central every day, Monday through Friday. That's 1800 UTC, so a little earlier on the West Coast, a little later on the East Coast of the United States. But appreciate you guys hanging out, everybody watching the replay as well. And we're going to work through some more of these past guests. Tonight, we've got a couple more interviews. Pastor Robert Morris will be here. I'm looking forward to that one. And we'll bring that to you probably pretty soon. And then some live guests very soon coming up. Cranking up, changing the way Christian television is done, reaching into new places where people are watching, and hopefully bringing some value to your life. I'm Randy Robison. This is Life Today Live. Thank you very much for joining me, and we'll see you next time.
Where are you going to spend eternity?